We're going to the round of questions and comments, but before we do that, I think it's only fair that we give Professor de Soysa an opportunity to briefly comment on some of the sort of critical remarks made by Professor Mousseau and Professor Tennyson. If you'd like to do that, you can use this.
Thank you very much to both discussants for very good comments. It's hard to argue with the historians, so I'm not even going to try now. But there were very good points made, and I'll try to address them very, very broadly, because we can pick nits as we go do our research into the future. But I don't think I have much of a quarrel with Michael. We perhaps disagree about whether or not conflict is broadly societal, in terms of, do I really care about that other guy who lives on the other side of the country with whom I may have an arm's length transaction, or whether it's the state that governs the way in which I behave towards that guy. Because even Adam Smith said, no state, no capitalism, because the first thing that merchants will want to do is to fix prices, right? That would be the first thing that merchants would want to do. And so Adam Smith said, a state has to be there to uphold contract and prevent rent seeking, the type of behavior that I argued is what is the norm in most poor country, third world poor countries that have this kind of conflict, right? The president's brother has all the businesses, the contracts are given to your ethnic group, and so on. This is what I mean by mercantilism, and this is what I mean by autarkic processes by which people seek rents, and therefore creates high payoffs for those people who want to organize in the shadows for gaining rents from, for example, smuggling and other kinds of, building other kinds of infrastructures that are rebellion-specific capital. So I don't have a problem with that. Very rich countries have very high-intensity crime, right? The United States has been spending something like $80 billion fighting the war on drugs, and apparently the problem's getting worse, not better. And the argument is there is an enormous amount of billions that a few people can get by organizing drug smuggling into the United States. They even have submarines today, right? That's a huge investment. The argument is there is a payoff to that investment. And so even rich capitalistic countries have to constantly deal with crime, and the reason why crime is not like civil war in rich countries is the state is organized and dismantles it. And the payoff to those kinds of organization have generally gone away besides drugs. So if you take Afghanistan and take away all the heroin, and there's still $500 on top of a TV that you have to pay in terms of a bribe, on average, you're still going to have organizing in the shadows, because it's the same payoff, it's just the commodity has changed. Drugs have changed to TVs. So that's the kind of argument that I'm making. And so Michael and I will look into this into the future and try to get to the bottom of this. We are using proxies that are broad measures. Sure, Norway and Sweden are capitalistic economies with heavy government involvement, but these are ideal types, right? You have a totally totalitarian socialist economy in which there is not even one contract between people, and then you have a very, very free market, and somewhere in between everybody fits. But what I am finding in the statistics are those people that look awful fit on more towards the other end of that scale, right? So nobody would argue that Norway or Sweden is not capitalistic. There are only degrees, and that scale will allow me to find out where those people fit, on the left side of the scale or the right side of the scale. And so, of course, association is not causation, but look at it from this side. There are so many counter-arguments that start off on the wrong foot, right? So you have the race to the bottom argument in the globalization debate. As economies become more free and the markets are expanding, states will be disempowered relative to capital, and this will lead to a race to the bottom and social disarray. Right? Even the UN has a publication, the UNCTAD, not the UNCTAD, but the UNRISD, called Globalization and Social Disarray. And they make these kinds of arguments. The beauty of the statistics is it doesn't matter which case you pick to tell your story, the world is not more blue-like. You can stand on your head and tell me the world is more blue-like. I can tell you, no, it's actually more red-like. So I can always pick the case I want to pick in order to tell the story I want to tell, but if I start off on the wrong foot, that is, the world is round and not flat, then you're going to get it horribly wrong. Maybe you're not looking at the right things in your cases. That may be one answer. So that's sort of general. I know you're telling me to shut up. So.
All three of you will have the opportunity, of course, to comment later. But I think it's important that we can have some questions and comments from the listeners. And as I said, if you want to ask your questions in Norwegian, I'll try to translate for you. There's been surprisingly little disagreement in the panel about that there is something about capitalism that causes peace, but maybe some of you disagrees with that. I mean, I would have a number of questions, but yes, Torbjørn Røe Isaksen.
My name is Torbjørn Røe Isaksen. My question is, well, it could be directed to Indra. You seem to have a very strong sense of man being rational and following rational choices, but a lot of people would argue that man is driven by other forces as well. That we're irrational. We tend to seek honor. We're occupied with strength, with power, with increasing our territory, not necessarily because it's economically rational, but just because it's another part of human nature. So how does that fit into your hypothesis?
Please, yes.
Very good question. I wouldn't say that we don't see irrational behavior, but I would simply say that it looks more like rational behavior. People do make agreements. Rebels do make agreements with governments and enter the parliament. They do cut deals. At the very least, conflict to exist has to be feasible. There's got to be finance, right? And so if people are behaving irrationally, that is, there are lots of martyrs out there. Let's imagine that there are martyrs out there providing these public goods, bringing justice at very high cost to themselves, including death. We don't observe it that often relative to the other. That is, we observe much more that there is more rational behavior than there is irrational behavior. In some sense, it's self-serving for social scientists to say, you know, it is mostly rational behavior, but because that's what allows us to model it through theory. If we think it's irrational, then it's just completely random, right? I don't know where the next conflict is going to occur. I can't even predict it in Norway. We may have civil war here tomorrow because somebody is going to organize it. It's far better for me as a scientist to say, I really doubt it's going to happen in Norway tomorrow. I'll tell you why. And so that's how I feel about it. But this is not to say that people don't organize violence for honor and so on. We just observe it far less than the opposite.
Can I add quickly to that? I would argue, I would make the argument that in a non-capitalist economy, honor can be for the group, or there is such a thing as honor for non-economic reasons. What happens with capitalism is honor is in getting rich. Honor is in getting rich honestly. And so that would be a key distinction, actually, between our work.
I have a couple of questions now, one in the back here and one to my right here. So, yeah.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Gene Mitchell. I am a student from Mercer University in America. First, I would like to thank all of you for being here, and I think Adam Smith would love to see this thoroughly. However, my question comes in the terms of capitalism. It seems very important for some of you on the panel to believe that peace comes